Can I just ask you a little bit about what we're expecting then? Because the early takeaway message is that we were starting to get back to normal on many of these pieces of the puzzle around the supply chain. What's your expectation from here?
Yeah, good morning from Geneva. And yes, unfortunately, this is bad news on two accounts. If we don't get back to normal in the supply chain, it also means that we will continue to have longer waiting times in ports and containers. We have some hard data comparing time in port since COVID and pre-COVID. So the typical time a container ship spends in port globally is 12% longer than before COVID. Typical container door-to-door, 20% longer. So all this, for the economist, means like the supply curve moves to the left. The demand, interestingly, also is impacted, again, also by the new variant, if you want, because the longer it takes us to get back to normal, the longer we will not spend money on haircuts, restaurants, travel, or movies, and instead buy things, buy stuff which are ordered by e-commerce. And this shifts the demand curve to the right. And where these two meet is higher and higher. And that's why we have these record freight rates and delays and congestion. So it is really bad news, this new variant, also for the supply chain.
How much of this depends on China? Because we've been talking about the factory of the world having zero tolerance when it comes to COVID for many, many months. But with that sort of approach not necessarily changing with the new variant, how do we consider the impact to China and global supply chains from here?
Well, a lot of the goods that we purchase while we are in lockdown are made in China. So yes, there's this increased demand, but the stoppage and shortage and the volume of capacity that is being held up and that leads to this global shortage is actually largely on the west coast of the United States. Now we have congestion and delays everywhere, but because of the volume of trade that is held up in front of Los Angeles, it is there where we have, depends how you calculate, but maybe 1/3 of the capacity that is held up globally is at that place where the ships are waiting, and on those ships are the containers that are needed. So in that sense, yes, it's goods from China, but the main bottleneck and delays are very often in the ports of destination and largely also in Europe and the United States.
Can I ask you about autos? Because that's the area of the market where we are seeing weakness today, investors taking a very cautious approach. Is it right to expect then that all of the pieces, whether it's the chips or other parts of the supply chain that go into autos, will be impacted by this latest twist around the variant?
Yeah, in general, this is just one very nice example of the deeper and deeper supply chains. Even though the cost of moving a good from, say, Shanghai to Los Angeles or from Vietnam to Rotterdam may not be that high for a high value good, but because a lot of the bits and pieces that are inside the good, that are inside the component, that are inside, that you have up to 9 steps of deeper supply chain. So in the end, we accumulate these higher transport costs, and the every risk, every delay, every missing component that then leads to this accumulated big impact on high value goods. The other goods that are highly impacted are actually very low value goods, where the transport cost assume a high share of the delivered good price. So there are these two types of goods that are most negatively affected by this congestion and the high freight rates.